This is Babe Finley, Kevin's friend from high school, and you're listening to the Kabauer Hour, only on Spotify.
Okay, as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, taking you now to an interview with the most positive person I've ever met in my entire life,
There he is.
Mr. Mark Vigeant.
Kevin Bow Wow Bauer.
You might know him from UCB or Caveat, or he was a writer for the Prairie Home Companion. So let's talk to him. Look, to me, he's the most positive person I've ever met in my life, but I haven't gotten his take on himself yet. So first, I guess I should ask, Mark, do you consider yourself an optimist or a pessimist?
I consider myself to be an optimist.
Okay, thank God, because the entire culmination of this podcast really honestly hinges on that.
Though,
Although,
I think there is something to be said about it being a case by case basis and optimism being more of an action rather than a flavor of person. Tying your identity to optimism sets you up for an existentialist crisis when a lot of things in your life that are outside of your control lead to a sense of pessimism. And I think we all do ourselves a favor by not tying adjectives like this to our objective self. It's like saying I am funny, but at the same time, when I'm having sex, I'm not making jokes.
hey, speak for yourself, pal.
Oh boy, we have fun.
And look, it's like I talked about earlier, too. It's nice to see that you can have control over your own perspective. Even though, in my mind, Mark is unendingly positive, sometimes it's a ride for him, too.
For me, what I just said to you was what I have over the past couple of months been revealing about myself. So, for instance, I was ruthlessly optimistic about 5 years ago that, like, the sun was always shining on Mark, that things were going my way, that I was going to work my way into the career I wanted. And I had all the evidence to suggest that things were going in that direction. And then I think I lost sight of what I was doing it all for. I lost sight of where the fun was. I stopped feeding myself. I stopped listening to myself, and the like little insecurities and demons that have always been there gained more power, and I let them do that. And now I'm working on letting those demons putter out and vomit up all the gross garbage that they've inhaled, like that scene in Spirited Away.
If you haven't seen Spirited Away, it's great. There's a scene where this dragon gets attacked by like all these little paper birds, but later on it gets healed and it flies away.
That's me, babe. I want to get to that dragon state. It definitely does require some effort to be optimistic in certain ways. Some things are really easy to be optimistic about. I'm quite optimistic that the sun will come out tomorrow. I'm less optimistic that I will have solved climate change, that we will have solved climate change as a society by tomorrow.
Look, he does have a good point there. A few other people have noted that it does seem to be more challenging to be optimistic. I think pessimism in general is kind of a default setting for a lot of people.
I think optimism requires a sense of self care. You can't. It's more difficult to be optimistic when you're coming from a place of pain and your basic needs are not being met.
So, Mark, what is your advice to me and everyone else who would like to be more optimistic?
Get off social media. That's number one. Pretty well documented at this point that the algorithms on these social media platforms are designed to keep you there longer, not necessarily nourish you. My experience as a aspiring entertainer, it's very easy to open up Instagram and just see a stream of everybody's highlight reel curated perfectly that make you feel like you're not doing enough ever. And so number two, I would recommend The Artist's Way. Super hard.
We also talked about a book that he's reading called The Artist's Way.
That's just one path towards reconnecting with a greater sense of your creative self. But and I do think when you're in touch with your creativity and your personal spirituality, it's much easier to be optimistic. And then, so in that same vein, self-care in general. So I'm talking spending time with yourself, going on hikes, exercise. Get out there. That shit actually changes the way your brain works in a positive way. Turn off notifications on your phone. I have do not disturb on pretty much all the time. And then the other thing I'd recommend is getting involved in some sort of local political activity, finding people whose values are similar to your own, which might take the first step of discovering what your own values are, which you could do through self-care therapy, artist's way, writer's workshops, pottery class, dance class. Figuring out your values, finding other people who share those values, and dedicating time to some sort of cause that makes you feel better. Making time for other people is good. But also, I would say my number one thing here is going easy on yourself, because it's really easy to go really super hard on yourself in our society. And if you take every day one step at a time and you stop putting the weight of the world on your shoulders in the morning, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier to see the beauty in the small things that you do and to be optimistic that things are going to get better. That's my answer.
All right. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to articulate it.
Look, I like all that a lot. I think putting yourself in one box is a little bit too constrictive. I think one thing that we all could stand to do a little more of is being nicer on ourselves, showing ourselves a little bit more compassion, maybe even a little bit more tenderness.